The moonlight breathes on Walker House and softens scrub and hill. The native trees are strangely stirred, the pines are very still. The nurse's lantern flits, and pain and sorrow cease. For all the patients are asleep, and all is rest and peace.
World War II affected everyone. As the Japanese offensive ramped up in the Southwest Pacific, more and more Australian women were putting up their hands to support our soldiers on the front line. Nurses, aides and support staff, there were thousands of brave women risking their lives to help stop the Japanese. But with more women at war, more and more were returning each month sick or injured. So in March 1943, the government decided to set up the 3rd Australian Women's Hospital in this grand building that you see in front of you. For this story, please stick to the foreshore trail and don't venture into the main building, as at present it operates as a school.
The first time I remember seeing this hospital was around, I suppose, 1944, when I came to visit my aunt, who was in the armed forces during World War II as a patient. She was a patient down in number 3 Women's Hospital, which is now Rivendell. We sat out in the garden, and I can remember the showboat going up the river, and it had a voiceover telling people what they were seeing on the riverbank. And I remember the voice saying in a sing-song sort of a way, "This is the soldieress's place." And I remember turning around to my aunt and saying, "What's a soldieress?" And she said, "Your aunt is, and so am I."
You can just imagine Jan's aunt and the other women sitting out on these lawns here, with the sun filtering down through the trees, looking out at the water, a world away from where they'd just been. It would have been such a welcome respite from the war.
The Red Cross also set up what they call the hut in the grounds for therapy for the patients, where they could go and learn craft work and things like that. We've got quite a lot of samples of that in our museum, which we're very lucky to receive.
Lois Michael is from the City of Canada Bay Heritage Society, who regularly take tours through Rivendell and enjoy shedding some light on its intriguing past. The story all starts with the successful 19th century businessman and philanthropist, Thomas Walker.
Well, just before Thomas died, he put a codicil in his will leaving £100,000 to build a hospital on a point just opposite from Uralla. It took in patients from convalescent hospitals around Sydney. They could stay for a month with no charge. If they wanted to contribute, they could, but there were no costs to them for anything there. It was all free.
If you look carefully, you might be able to find some of Thomas Walker's insignia etched into the buildings on the Uralla estate. So the story went that at some time in Walker's midlife, a homeless man knocked on his door looking for help. Walker turned him away, only for his staff to discover the man the next day, lying dead near the gatehouse on his estate. After this happened, Walker went on to establish a trust fund for homeless men. And years later, on his death, his will was realised.
For some time past, I've had it in my mind to establish on part of my land here a hospital on a somewhat extensive scale for the reception and restoration to health of convalescent patients from the hospitals of Sydney or elsewhere.
This was written in Thomas Walker's will, and so in 1891, work began on the construction of the Thomas Walker Convalescent Hospital. This was the original purpose of this grand building and extensive grounds, a peaceful place for patients to rest and recuperate in. The project was overseen by architect John Sulman in what is called a Queen Anne style of architecture, popular in 1870s in England. But it's also mixed with a number of other eclectic influences, like the statues of the 6 women standing high up in the clock tower. Can you see them? I love these, and each time I come here, I feel like they're almost looking down on me. They are calm and strong. These statues are actually influenced by the ancient Greek cyclids that you can see in buildings like the Acropolis. On completion, the hospital here could house up to 70 patients at a time.
Well, the building's a very ornate building. It's got the main central section, the towers, which was for staff and that sort of work. And then there were two pavilions to either side. One was for the women and one was for the men. They had their own dining rooms and things, and then the central kitchen. In the early days, the patients all came by water.
Are you down near the Watergate at the river's edge? If not, head over there. I sometimes wonder when patients arrived here from Circular Quay and looked up at the main hospital building, whether or not they felt nervous at the imposing size of the hospital, or relief to be away from the hustle and bustle of the city. We never really know, but we do get a sense of how patients felt staying at the hospital from one account written in 1893.
One might vainly search the world over to find a parallel institution so admirably have nature and art combined to form an ideal resting place for the weak and weary. As you wander through the corridors and rooms of the princely structure, you wonder at the open-handed generosity of the benefactor, who provided not only for the erection of the building, but for the maintenance of its patients in such unstinted fashion.
So while you can see the hospital is grand from the outside, I would say it's even more impressive once you step inside. As you open the front doors, the front entrance leads to a beautiful chapel, which has a series of stained glass windows, with the central one showing the Walker family crest, a picture of waves crashing down on ragged rocks, and an almost disturbing, all-seeing eye peering out at you. I believe this is meant to be the eye of God watching out over us, but I've read it also might have links to Freemasonry. I'm not sure, I'll leave that one to the more curious of you to go home and research. Underneath the crest is the family motto in Latin, Per varias casas, which means through many journeys. Now, it's hard for us to know what this meant to the Walkers, but we do know they worked hard to achieve what they did in their lifetimes. They bravely faced many journeys, and it was their courage to dream big which enabled them to touch the lives of so many people. In this hospital alone, there have been more than 70,000 patients since it first opened its doors, including one well-known Australian poet, Henry Lawson, and hundreds of returned service women from World War II. Even today, the Thomas Walker Hospital is used as a school and a place of healing for young people facing their own challenges. And that's why, when the school was founded here in 1977, it was decided to change the name of the hospital to Rivendell, just like the Rivendell in Tolkien's The Hobbit, a place of sanctuary for those on difficult journeys.
There is a stately home of rest, where all the scene is fair, and in the sun the ripples run along the river there. 'Twas builded in the noonday dream of one of kindly wealth, in the hope that many sufferers should be restored to health.